Okay, everybody, welcome. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll do introductions, and we're going to start a little bit different because we have our new voting members. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian for introducing Scott.
Thank you, Dale, and welcome, Scott. I'd like to introduce Scott Ryan as our new voting member to the state committee. Scott Ryan will be representing the New York Association of Conservation Districts. And Scott has served on the NYACD board since 2012, starting out as a division representative and moving up to secretary in 2016 and a second vice president in 2017. Scott also served on the Montgomery County Soil and Water District Board and has been doing so since 2007 and became the chairman of that board in 2011 and still is the chairman of that board. As if those were not qualifying experiences enough, Scott also works hard daily, certainly as all farmers do, on his family-owned farm and has been doing so since 1990. Scott works alongside his wife, Kathy, and son, Justin, on honor-owned farms in Canajoharie, New York, Montgomery County. So Scott, welcome. And if you'd like to tell the committee anything more about yourself or your role with NYACD districts or about your family farm that you own and operate with your wife and son, please. Here's your opportunity, Scott. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to finally participate in this committee. And I hope I can serve it well, as everybody else ahead of me has, and that's about it.
Welcome, Scott. We appreciate you're here, and I know it's a long process to get approved to finally get on, but we're glad you're on board.
Thank you.
All right, I will start with the rest of introductions. I'm Dale Stein, Chair. Erica?
Erica Goodman, voting member.
Dave?
Dave Brass, Vice Chair, voting member.
Thank you. Turn it back to you, Brian.
Okay, thank you. And we'll just note that Darren Hickling, voting member, is absent for today's meeting. So I will go through the advisory members, starting with Ag and Market.
Morning, Brian. Tim here.
Good morning, Tim. Cornell Cowles.
Hey, everybody. This is Brian Rom. Just joined. Thanks.
Good morning, Brian. Good timing. Appreciate it. Cornell Cooperative Extension. Conservation District Employees Association.
Good morning. Caitlin Stewart, Vice President.
Good morning, Caitlin.
Good morning.
Department of Environmental Conservation.
Good morning, Sarah Latessa, Division of Water, DEC.
Good morning, this is Julie
Good morning,
Berlinski, also Division of Water, DEC.
Good morning, Julie. State Department of Health.
Paul Kasmarzik, Public Drinking Water Program.
Morning, Paul.
Good morning, Paul.
Morgan Tarbell, also Drinking Water Bureau.
Good morning, Morgan. Thank you for joining.
Morning.
New York State Department of State.
This is Stephanie Wojtowicz, Department of State, Office of Planning and Development.
Stephanie, welcome. I thought you had a conflict this morning, but I think you'll be having to leave us early.
Yes, I have to leave a little bit before 11. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. Welcome. SUNY ESF. Steve Shaw let me know that he might be a little late and not making roll call, but will be joining us soon. And I'm going to ask if anybody from NRCS has joined. Blake Glover sends his regrets. He has a conflict. Wasn't sure if he was going to be able to find anyone to attend today. Okay. Now we'll go through staff. We'll go from west to east as usual. Victor?
Good morning, Victor Giacomo, State Committee Regional Field Staff for Western New York.
Good morning, Victor.
Morning.
PJ Emmerich.
Good morning, everybody. PJ Emmerich, Region 2 Associate Environmental Analyst for the Finger Lakes region.
Good morning, PJ. Greg Albrecht also has a conflict, but will be joining us later. Ron Bush.
Good morning, Ron Bush, Comprehensive Nutrient Management Specialist with the State Committee.
Good morning, Ron. Brendan Jordan.
Hi, good morning. Brendan Jordan, CNMP Specialist with the State Committee.
Good morning, Brendan. Ryan Cunningham.
Hey, good morning. Ryan Cunningham, State Committee Representative for the North Country.
Good morning, Ryan. Scott Fickbaum.
Good morning, everyone. This is Scott Fickbaum. I'm the Region 3 AEA Central New York Regional Coordinator.
Good morning, Scott. Jennifer Clifford.
Good morning, Jennifer Clifford, Sierra Program Manager, State Committee.
Good morning, Jennifer. Ben Luskin. Bethany Bisdew.
Morning, everybody. This is Bethany Bisdew. I'm the Ag Non-Point Source Program Manager with the State Committee.
Morning, Bethany. Jason Kokinos.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jason Kokinos. I'm on the State Committee. I'm the data analyst.
Morning, Jason. Tim Clark.
Yep, good morning. I'm the engineer with the State Committee.
Morning, Tim. Lauren Przorski.
Good morning. I'm the EBM Program Manager.
Good morning, Lauren. Am I missing anybody? All right, I'd also like to welcome all our conservation districts on the phone today, our partners and members of the public. I would like to remind everybody later on in the agenda, when we discuss the Round 27 request for proposals and rating sheet, as the agenda notes, we'll ask that all districts and any farmers that might be with us who might participate through their conservation district on Round 27 of Ag Non-Point Source to please recuse themselves from that part of the discussion by disconnecting from the WebEx or the phone line. That will be the last item that we will be addressing today, so you will not miss anything else on the agenda. Just wanted to quickly remind folks of that. With that, Dale, introductions are complete. Ready for review and approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Brian. Any additions and corrections for last month's minutes?
I did get an email forwarded to me from Blake Glover, NRCS State Conservationist, with a few corrections to his report. I will make those corrections, and they will be posted with the approved minutes.
Great, thank you. Anything from anyone else? Get a motion to approve last month's minutes, please.
Don't move.
Second?
Second.
I'll do roll call for vote. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Correspondence, Brian?
Okay, I do not have any correspondence to address with the committee today, but I do have a quick budget update. Since the last time we met, the state fiscal year 21-22 budget was approved. And this information was sent to all conservation districts and state committee voting members prior, but I just want to quickly highlight a few of the Environmental Protection Fund line items of interest to districts. The Environmental Protection Fund was again fully funded at $300 million this year, including $18 million for Ag Non-Point Source. That does have a couple of special projects from that amount: $1 million for Cornell IPM, $500 for CC of Suffolk County, and $250,000 for Cornell's PMEP program. $4.5 million for the Climate Resilient Farms program, which also includes $200,000 for the Cornell Soil Health program. $18 million for the Water Quality Improvement program. $14.15 million for the Waterfront Revitalization Program, otherwise known as the Watershed Management Implementation Funding through the Department of State. $13.238 million for invasive species. 18.5 for the Oceans and Great Lakes line item, which is otherwise known as the Ecosystem Space Management, for which we do get funding for that program. $2.3 million for the Finger Lakes Lake Ontario Protection Alliance, $250,000 for Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance, and $18 million for farmland protection. And the highlight, I think the highlight for this year's budget in the EPF was $11 million for soil and water conservation districts, which represented a $500,000 increase over last year's levels. And that would be spread across all the participating districts. So there weren't many line items that were increased this year, and certainly increased to that level. So again, great testament to the work of conservation districts and how important that work is, not only locally, but also to the state of New York. So state operations budget was flat from last year's, so nothing really to report there. Again, all this information was sent previously, and it will also be recorded in the minutes.
Brian, a question just came through on the chat asking if there have been any changes to last year's executive order that allows the administration to adjust the budget quarterly.
That I don't know the answer to that question. We can find out. I see that Lindsey had asked that, and we can try to get that information to Lindsey. That was, of course, the case for last year with the uncertainty related to COVID and the financial challenges that ensued. As we've reported previously, we were successful in securing approvals for the funding of our programs, as well as it started off a little bit slower, but we did get enough monthly to be able to process all the payments that we had received. So at the end of the year, we were not carrying forward a balance. So all that is good news. In addition to that, we were able to spend our entire state aid funding, which originates from the current budget year. As we can't carry a balance over by regulation, all that money has to go out the districts within that given year. So we will be certainly practicing the same again this year. So if that helps to answer some of the questions, Lindsey, I just from experience over the last year, things did get better as the months went ahead. And anything more specific on that, we will let you all know.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Climate
Back to you,
Resilient
Dan.
Program. Jason and Jennifer?
Hi, so this is Jason. I'll give the start with our dashboard on the program status of CRF. This is the program status of the database to date. There are 9 or so contracts still pending to get put in, so there's going to be some bigger changes next month than there's been recently. But to date in the CRF program, there are 14 completed contracts totaling $1.4 million, 56 active contracts totaling $5.9 million. 3 contracts have been canceled. No contracts are in partial closeout, and we are in the process of getting the database ready to accept round 5 of CRF, with the 44 contracts will be pending for $4 million. So that's it for the program status, but next month, hopefully more, and eventually very soon, the breakdown of round 5. So I'm looking forward to that. But let me know if you have any questions.
This is Jennifer Clifford, the round 5. So the contracts that Jason had mentioned, we are starting to get the plan of work for those from districts. Those are actually due today to their regional coordinators for review, and we will be going to contracts as soon as OSC approves that procurement record. So for round 6, we are Last month, the state committee approved combining two funding years into one round. So we put in a request with Department of Budget and are awaiting approval from DOP to offer a $8 million round for round 6. We don't have any amendments this month on current contracts, so that is all I have, unless there are any questions.
Questions, anyone? Thank you, Jason and Jennifer. We'll move on to voting staff advisory with we kind of changed our schedule a little bit, but we'll put that ahead of farther up than normal. But Erica, anything you want to add in today?
I don't, other than I'm having technical difficulties right now, so I can't actually see anyone. But I don't have any updates, so I might have to bop off and come back in if that's okay.
We can see you fine.
Okay, you can see me fine. I can hear you. I just can't use the chat or see Bethany's screen, unfortunately.
All right. I just got a notice from Brian. We have a guest on today, State Senator Borrello. Are you on that you would like to say a few words?
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning. Yes, I just wanted to join today and appreciate just to take a moment to say hello to everybody. I'm a 10-year veteran of county government, including being county executive in Chautauqua County. Worked very, very closely with our Soil and Water Conservation District and Dave Spann, our great leader there in Chautauqua County. And as the ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, I just wanted to come on and listen in and certainly offer my help however I can, with whatever things are coming down the pike here in Albany.
Thank you. We very much appreciate you joining us today, and any help you can give us in our endeavors is very greatly appreciated.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
We also have Lisa Vanstrom on. Do you have anything you'd like to say? You're muted yet.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Vanstrom, and I work for Senator Borrello in his Jamestown office in Chautauqua County. And I also am a board member for the Chautauqua County Soil and Water Conservation District under a field manager, David Spann. Thank you.
Welcome. We appreciate you being on board today. I will go back to where we were. Dave, do you have any thing you want to add today?
No, nothing today. Thank you.
All right, Brian, I'll turn it over for you to go through everybody.
Sure. Yes. As Dale noted, we've changed the order up a little bit today, so we can accommodate the discussion later on in the agenda. So I'm going to go through right now with additional advisory member reports, and I'll just go down the list like I normally do. And if you have anything to add, please feel free to unmute and give your report. Starting with Ag and Markets, Tim?
I'm good, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Cows, Brian Rom?
Nothing right now. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Go back to, let's see if Beth is joined from Cornell Cooperative Extension. Beth, are you on? Okay, CDEA, Caitlin?
Yes, Dustin provided an update that he would like me to share on his behalf. The Conservation District Employees Association is working on preparations for this year's Conservation Skills Workshop, and work has already begun. And if you're interested in helping this year, you can contact Tom Eskildson at Yates County. we made the difficult decision to cancel this year's leadership conference. We reached out to our partners at SWCC, NRCS, and NYACD, and due to the complications with COVID, most people unfortunately still cannot attend in-person meetings. So we are canceling the leadership conference. We're starting managers meetings with Zoom again, so that will be very beneficial for our conservation districts. Farm Days signups have been sent out, and we encourage anyone interested in supporting that excellent event. And at this time, the state fair is still a question mark. We host a booth there, and we are not quite sure how to proceed with planning, as we don't know if the state fair will be held this year. And that's all at this time. Thank you very much.
Caitlin, thank you so much. And thank Dustin as well for preparing that report. Appreciate it. DEC.
Hi, Brian. I don't think I have anything. This is Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Julie?
This is Julie. I don't have anything either.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Department of Health.
Hi, this is Paul Kasmarzik. I have a couple of items. One is that in a couple of weeks, we'll be beginning in earnest with the 5-year update on New York City's filtration avoidance determination. We've already had some preliminary talks with people at the city and also other people, mostly to discuss the report that the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, to discuss that report and what people liked and didn't like about the recommendations. And if all goes well, some of those recommendations will be included in this 5-year update. Some others, for various reasons, may have to wait until the sort of big scale update in 5 more years, which is like sort of like the real 10-year fad, as opposed to the 5-year revision. Although in both cases, it takes about the same amount of time to do it. It's about a year-long process. Some of you probably, if you're from the Hudson Valley, you've probably heard some news articles about the Lower Sopus Creek. The Lower Sopus Creek is called the Lower Sopus because the Upper Sopus flows into the Ashokan Reservoir, and then there are releases from the Ashokan Reservoir, which the Lower Sopus Creek. Now, this winter, we had a big snowstorm in this part of the state in December, and then a very rapid melt and a heavy rain that occurred Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, which melted everything, which led to a massive rush of water in the streams above the Ashokan Reservoir. Those streams are very, very flashy naturally. It's very steep terrain, and it exposes clay lenses, silt lenses left over from glaciation ages, which then flows into the reservoir. And the nature of these fine materials, particularly clays, is that if they're very, very light particles to begin with. And if they enter cold water, the water is so dense, in the wintertime, that these particles really just don't settle until the spring warm up. So you have this sort of muddy water, turbid water, relatively turbid water. It wasn't like Hurricane Irene or anything, but which filled the reservoir, and subsequent storms came into the reservoir had to be released because there's no more storage left in the reservoir. And so this has led to a prolonged period of time where turbid water has been coming down the Lower Sopus, and this has been very upsetting to the communities below the dam. So that's going on. It's involved with the DEC permit because technically that's considered a release coming out of the reservoir, just like it would be a release coming out of a factory or sewage treatment plant or whatever. That's how these things are regulated. So that's what's going on there. It remains to be seen. It's up to DEC how they want to work the permit and everything. So I just want to give you guys a brief update on that. And that's all I have. Morgan, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope, there's nothing else I have. You hit the nail on the head, Paul.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for that update. I really appreciate that. Certainly interesting. For the group, we use the term FAT a lot, but just want to remind folks what that acronym refers to.
Yes, FAD stands for Filtration Avoidance Determination. By and large, the city of New York does not filter their water. That is all the upstate reservoirs in what they call the Delaware system, which is out in Delaware and Sullivan counties, and then the Catskill system, which comes down the Catskill Aqueduct, is why it's called the Catskill system, which is Schoharie Reservoir and Ashokan Reservoir. And none of that's filtered. The reservoir, they do have the ability to filter a percentage of their water, which comes out of the original reservoirs located in Westchester and Putnam counties. And they can filter up to 290 million gallons a day. But the city typically uses about 1 billion gallons a day. So at most, they can get about, 29% of the water from that system. So as part of the agreement, which originally was with EPA, the city is one of the very, very few cities that has permission to not filter the water. There's a whole slew of programs that the city's involved in, ranging from sewage treatment plants to on-site septic systems to a big farm program, land purchase, land easements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all intended to keep the water pristine. And so every 10 years, by law, that suite of programs has to be looked at and revised if it's deemed necessary to protect the water quality.
Thank you, Paul, for that background. I really appreciate that. And Skinny Atlas Lake, Syracuse drinking water supply is the only other in New York State surface water reservoir that has the same?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Stephanie, Department of State.
Good morning. I don't have too much of an update, just that we're still preparing for hopefully a CFA consolidated funding application solicitation in early May. And I spoke a little bit about that last month, but we're still working on putting final touches on programs. And that will be focused on implementation mostly for the LWRP this year. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Stephanie, has the St. Lawrence River Watershed Management Plan been publicly released yet?
I believe it has been released. We just put the final touches on the press release. So thank you. We did get a quote from Ag and Markets and the commissioner, and we received a quote from the commissioner of DEC as well. So we just got that back the other day, and hopefully that will go out very soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
But it is up on the website, so people can go and see it.
Great. Thank you. Anything else, Stephanie?
Nope, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks so much. SUNY ESF, Steve, I see that you've joined us. Welcome.
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Brian. I just wanted to mention something that came through my mailbox yesterday, but that I saw the New York State Climate Impact Assessment is taking place again. This is done every 10 years in the state, and it's kind of coordinated by NYSERDA, but they're at a stage where they're looking for experts and stakeholders that have a sort of an interest in impacts of climate in the state. So I just wanted to, I hadn't seen that widely circulated before, maybe others had seen that. But basically in the next 2 weeks, if you're interested, they're asking people to sort of sign up to potentially be on that, in that group to write that report. So I can add the link to the chat here in a minute.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Steve.
But that's all I have. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask, actually, I'm going to go back to Scott Ryan, if you have anything to report from NYACD.
Not much. We're looking into having a face-to-face annual meeting. It'll be at the Hampton Inn in Casanova again if it happens. And still watching that soil health and climate resiliency bills in the state. Waiting on feedback and whatnot with that.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Okay, and I'm not going to run the roll call for the staff, but if you have a report or something to provide to the committee, I'll just ask that you take your phone off mute and go ahead and report.
Yeah, this is Tim Clark again. I want to remind all the districts that we're doing district directory updates this month in April. So if you haven't done your directory page, click on the link. I'll put the link down in the chat, and changes are saved automatically. If you haven't done that yet, please do it soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim.
Hi, Brian. It's Ron Bush. I want to just take a few moments to introduce to our new voting member and a few guests on the call that occasionally we update the state committee on our AEM Certified Planner list. This is an effort to organize and basically certify agricultural environmental management planners. It is a quick run through of the requirements would be those folks would become a Northeast Certified Crop Advisor. They would attend a 4-day CNMP training with yours truly, along with a few other staff members on our team, as well as some key partners. And then they enter in a 3-plan review where they submit 3 full CNMPs to us for an in-depth review, mentoring, corrections, and approval program. And after all of this, they become AEM Certified Planners. And the goal of AEM Certified Planners would be to write credible CNMPs that are useful to farmers. They support New York State planning efforts along with implementation efforts, as well as provide a planner certification for New York DEC CAPO permits. So our update right now is there's 51 current planners throughout the state. There's quite a few planners working along some stage of their development, but we have 9 active planners that are submitting CNMPs for our review. We break those out into 4 planners in the private sector and 5 in the public sector, which those would be in New York State County Soil and Water Conservation Districts. The last announcement on this effort would be we recently certified Chris Andreessen from Otsego County Soil and Water Conservation District. So we applaud his efforts, and he's a new member of the AEM Certified Planner group, and we will be sending out correspondence to all of our planners for their annual updates, where they're listed in our on our Ag and Markets website as AEM Certified Planners in the master directory. That's all for now, Brian. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for the update. 51 planners, that is excellent. And the new planner in Otsego County Soil and Water District, great news, appreciate that. I know that's not easy work, and it's not just about reviewing the CNMPs, but also mentoring those conditionally certified planners through the process. Appreciate all that you guys are doing and the work of all the planners out there as well. Thanks for that update. Anyone else? Well, I know a few more staff are going to be updating the committee later on through the agenda, but before I give a quick update, I'll just pause one more second to see if any of the staff got an update for you. Okay. I'll just inform the committee briefly, and I will have more on this topic again at a future committee meeting. That on April 12th, Commissioner Ball presented the Agriculture and Forestry Advisory Panel's draft recommendations to the full New York State Climate Action Council. This was a very broad and comprehensive set of recommendations that spanned both the agricultural and forestry sectors. I was able to give a presentation to this committee a couple of months back on the status of the agricultural recommendations. Nothing substantial changed from that point, except for more details added. I will say that we came up with about 120 slides worth of material for the Climate Action Council to review. Each panel chair was given only 30 minutes to present, and then there was an hour worth of question, answer, and discussion from the council. So the council received the full set of recommendations days ahead of time, and we're ready with questions and discussion. We also presented an abridged version to the council as well. I'd say, had real positive feedback from the council. Some good questions and discussion came our way. The commissioner really handled most of the questions on his own, especially related to the agricultural recommendations, for which he certainly is an expert on as well. We also had folks from the DEC, Division of Lands and Forests, and the Office of Climate Change were also on hand to help answer clarifying questions. The next step is in May, the 3 additional panels will be presenting their suite of recommendations. And if the Climate Action Council has anything that they are going to suggest in revisions, they were instructed to wait until the entire process is over and all the panels have discussed, as there are a lot of overlapping and parallel strategies and some certainly that will require interagency cooperation. With that said, if all goes through as we presented, then this work will become the structure for the scoping plan, which is due for public comment, I believe, in about a year, early January 2022. And that scoping plan will be finalized following that public comment. Again, the 40% emission reduction by 2030, 85% by 2050. So think about that 2030 goal is not that far off, really. So more to come. Certainly this has the potential to modify and change the programs that we have been administering and certainly bring more focus to them. So I will bring further updates to the committee as we have them. Questions, comments? Dale, this time I would ask any conservation districts that are on the line or anyone else to also feel free to take their phone off mute and give a report to the committee or ask questions or just give your thoughts.
Anyone? Anything else, Brian?
I think that is all for now. We are running ahead of schedule, so
Thank you.
good.
First, I want to apologize to Scott Ryan for not calling on him when I called on the other voting members. I got to get used to a new voting member. My fault. I want to add one thing. On HABs, we deal with in New York. In Florida, where my house is, I'm on Port Charlotte, north of Fort Myers, and they're dealing with major red tide. And it normally comes from the Okeechobee and feeds out into the Gulf at Fort Myers. But this year it's coming down the Miaka River, and they don't know from where, but they got massive fish die off all through the harbor to the point of very large fish are dying. Goliath groupers are washing up on shore that are weighing hundreds of pounds. it's got a massive concern. They've had a catch and release status in that harbor for 3 years now, and because of red tide 3 years ago out of Fort Myers, and now it looks like it's going to be extended due to how bad it is on the north end of the harbor. So it shows that we in New York here aren't the only ones dealing with these harmful algae blooms, and that it's going to be a massive problem across the country in dealing with, and a very expensive one and long-term fix. Just wanted to bring everybody up to date on what is happening elsewhere. Our next one is Tim Clark with Engineering Conservation Designation.
Yeah. Just as a bit of background for everybody who doesn't follow this every day, we have a suite of practices that NRCS updates every year, and some of those practices are conservation and some are engineering. The ones that are classified as engineering require a professional engineer or an engineer under the NRCS staff to sign off on the design and certify them after they've been constructed. And so a couple years ago now, NRCS reclassified a few of their practices from the conservation list and put them on the engineering list. Those were livestock pipelines that are gravity fed, culverts for trails and walkways, and also culverts and fords for stream crossings. So the state committee and the districts realized that would, if we went the same route, that would increase costs for projects for districts, and even some projects just wouldn't be able to be done because it's hard to find engineering support for little stream crossings and culverts all over the state. So last fall, we inquired with the State Board for Engineering and Land Surveying if they could provide a timeline for us to interact with them about these three practices and see if we could use them as a technical backstop for keeping these on the conservation list and not switching them to engineering. So that was last fall. We just were asking for a timeline. They decided to go ahead and start reviewing them on their own instead of providing a timeline. And around Christmas, they came back to me and asked for some more details on what kind of district staff are designing these projects, and kind of to lay out a framework for what some kind of common sense limits could be on those three practices. So I provided that in January, and then I got a letter back from them a couple of weeks ago, basically stating that they feel all those practices are professional engineering work, and anything associated with them is professional engineering. So that was disappointing for me because they'd kind of given me hope around Christmas that they were going to work with us and come up with a framework that we could still work within. But that wasn't the case when they decided to put things down on paper. They pretty much went with the most conservative interpretation of state law that they could do, which just groups everything. It's a big wide net cast, gathering everything into the professional engineering designation. So I updated the TAC on this yesterday, and we had some good discussion. In general, I feel like most people feel we're just going to kind of take this advice at face value. We'll work to increase engineering capacity within the districts, but we're not going to try and challenge the board or do state law changes or go some other route. That we're basically going to take their advice and reclassify these three as engineering for our own state programs. That's the direction I'm leaning to. It's kind of my advice, is just to go with it. But I feel like it is a state committee decision. And so I'm here to gather input from the voting members and also any partners or districts that weren't able to attend the TAC.
Brian and I discussed this earlier about looking into seeing what the appeals process was, because we don't know what it is. And also looking at maybe we can work to more regional engineers in order to meet the demand that will exist across the state. The decision by the engineer board doesn't surprise me. We've kind of this has kind of been moving this whole way with engineering for many years now, all the way back to Peter Wright, that they require more engineering. The issue is it becomes, how do you get it all done, especially for the very small projects? Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Dale, and Tim. Thanks for that good summary and background as well. And so just to ask again, Tim, did you get a response from the Secretary of the Board or the board chair to at least have a follow-up discussion on the extent of this decision, how far it reaches?
I only followed up to ask if there was an appeals process or if there was any regulatory authority over the board, and I didn't hear back on those questions yet. I haven't inquired about the scope or the expanse of their reach with this advice. From the letter that they sent, they were clear that this only applies to work that soil and water conservation technicians do regarding these three practices.
Right. So, a landowner, resident doing any of these on their own, certainly this would not apply. Good discussion yesterday about just how routine calls to a district office are in regards to sizing of culverts and other types of matters that this designation might impact in the future. And what is the district's liability if they provide any level of assistance to a landowner who's then going to use any recommendations the district provides to go ahead and construct a crossing with a culvert or something to that effect. So I don't know if it would change a lot for most districts, certainly might for some, but noting that we do have a few districts on the line today as well, if anybody's got questions for Tim or me or any thoughts on this matter, certainly we'd love to hear them.
And I just do want to note, for the partners' benefit, for our big grant programs, we do encourage the districts to build engineering costs into those grant applications. We have line items for those. But for little projects that come up day to day, or projects that they'd like to complete with Part C money, or just technical assistance where people call the district for looking for advice, those are the areas where they'll be hindered now.
Tim, just a quick question on that. Do you know what I know you in your intro had said to you that one of the bigger factors was addressing costs. So do you know what that impact could look like for those smaller projects? And is that something that would be able to be raised in kind of that appeal process?
I'm sorry, you trailed off there at the end. What was the last sentence?
I was just asking if kind of the projected impact on cost to those collective small projects would be beneficial to raise, or if that's something that could be collected for the appeals process, if that's the route that you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, in general, engineering is about $100 an hour, for ranging to $150 an hour. But the number of hours on a project, is variable based on complexity.
Tim, this is Lindsey from Wayne County. How are you today?
Great.
So this is good information to hear. I think there's an option that I think this might be a great opportunity to give the same report to the next district managers meeting. I've been holding my breath, basically bated breath, in hopes that they would move forward with this. I think if you surveyed some of the districts and asked for honest, anonymous responses, you would get a collective grouping that would say that having to pay for engineering every time you did something as simple as a culvert crossing, even if it was done to spec, would drive up the cost significantly. We've also seen, like, I'm working on several projects right now, and we're seeing increased cost in engineering. So the average cost is 100 to 150, but we're seeing it go up even more than that. So I think the opportunity to either appeal or potentially work with NYCD to review the law and see about regulation change, even if it takes time, might be worth reviewing. I know that's not necessarily what the TAC does, but that might be a function they could do within the partnership. Because like, that's basically what we do. Our staff are trained to do this type of design work, and it just like with working through USDA's JAA, I think if there's an opportunity to move forward and try to find a way eventually, even if it's not immediate. And just because they said this the first time, I don't think it's a bad thing. The other thing is Division 2 has been talking since the fall of 2018 about doing a regional engineer. And part of the hard thing would be, as Megan said, it's the availability of PEs, or even people that want to do this type of work. So we've actually talked to a couple of folks locally that are thinking about retirement that are from Wayne County, and they want to do something relatively part-time, but they don't want to do anything where they actually are going to have to travel. There's two that I can think of. You know, they want to stay within the county. So, I mean, it might be worth, if we're going to move in this direction, to talk to some of the state engineering schools and kind of let them know that there might be a pot of people being looked for. Because by junior year, usually most engineering students have some kind of sweet ride out of state that they're going to as soon as they graduate. So at least that's the information we've been finding in our searches. So just wanted to put that info out there.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you.
I
And
see.
that's what Dustin talked about yesterday as well. It's not necessarily always the cost, but the availability for some of these smaller projects, and that certainly is a barrier. Megan, thanks for adding that additional thought in the chat as well.
I see another problem coming up. If you raise the cost on these little projects a fair amount with the soil and water districts, then you'll have less landowners participating with soil and water and doing it on their own, which is really what we don't want.
Absolutely correct.
I like the idea of finding out from the other districts, survey or whatever, how much effect it might have on districts, so that we could find out how to, and possibly moving forward on some long-term goals of mitigating this, I guess.
This is Caitlin. I'd be happy to organize that survey, and Tim seems to be the contact point for this. So Tim, maybe you and I can hash out some questions, get the background behind it. I want to make sure that what I'm communicating is correct, and then blitz it out statewide and have it be anonymous so that we get honest answers.
Yeah, we could coordinate on that. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a really good idea. And I mean, this latest determination from the engineer board is not, as I think Dale, you mentioned, and others, it's not a surprise. And it's just one more step that, continues to validate the need to increase engineering services across the state within conservation districts or by conservation districts or in support of conservation districts. And I don't know if regional engineers are the answer for all, or if individual district engineers, if they can be found, or making sure that engineers are available on some level of retainer is the right answer. And it might vary across the state, depending on how a district is set up. I know that the services provided by Don Lynch, retired NRCS engineer through Oneida County, has certainly assisted many districts in the eastern side of the state in getting things done. I know that in other areas where that capacity doesn't exist, there are big gaps, and sometimes certainly some of these smaller projects just aren't getting done. So I'd like to have that as a part of a survey, if you will, or point of discussion about what really is the right model out there. If there is one particular model or a couple of different models, is there something that we can continue to strive for, work for? Because, we have seen where in the last few years, districts have been successful at hiring PEs and keeping them at least, longer than we expect that they would. And is it outright out of school to get some experience, or more, I think, the retired engineer that, wants to keep working, keep their skill set sharp, but maybe not, travel outside of the county. So, it's certainly, something that continues to give us a justification for increasing district aid, increasing resources in support of district capacity. There's no doubt about that.
Hey, Brian, this is Steve Shaw from SUNY ESF. I just thought I'd mention, I'd be interested in being involved in the discussion a little more also, given that I'm in an engineering program where we turn out about 40 students a year. And actually a lot do stay in the state, but they go to bigger kind of established engineering firms that do municipal work and government work at a larger scale and not sort of, smaller scale projects. But it would be interesting to talk about sort of how do you develop that pipeline? Because from knowing students personally, I think there are actually some that would like to go that path, but there's not a very clear pipeline how to do that. So I'd be willing to kind of be involved in that conversation on that end of it.
Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate that. I'm sure Caitlin and Tim took note of that, and would love to have you as part of that discussion. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it will probably be a multi-phased approach across the state because there's so much differentiation across the state that we may have a regional one in certain areas, but some part-time and full-time in other areas. I think that we need to determine what the real need is across the state. Okay.
Yeah. And just one more point. Well, maybe not the last point, but we also are working through Tim's Conservation Approval Authority program, and we of course addressed the JAA policies and procedures within the last 12 months at this committee, or maybe it was 18 months now. It seems to kind of be a blur, but. With that said, I mean, we are still also committed to increasing the capacity of district technicians to do much of this work. If they can't sign off on the final product, having engineers with a relationship with districts that can do that effectively, cost effectively, that is also another option, that we need to explore. Obviously, when an engineer has no relationship with a technician and isn't working with them on a regular basis, they'd be really reluctant to put their signature, stamp, and liability on something. But again, as we documented to the State Engineering Board, that many of these practices are squarely within the skill set of our district technicians, and being able to continue to increase capacity there so that they can take it as far as possible before having to go to an engineer for the final sign-off is also something that we need to continue to strive for.
Anything else? Any other comments on engineering, anyone?
This is Caitlin Stewart once more. We had a great meeting with Tim. Dustin was on and Brian was on as well. And I just want to reiterate that some districts feel that this will really hinder costs and the ability to get boots on the ground for these projects. So I feel anything we can do, starting with the survey, starting a dialogue with Steve Shaw about how to connect graduates with soil and water conservation districts, what Brian and Tim mentioned with Tim's Conservation Approval Authority program, all of that is going to be necessary in this wheelhouse as we move forward. So I just want to thank Tim for arranging that meeting, and I thank the state committee for their efforts with this and keeping districts at the forefront that will allow us to do the work as cleanly and efficiently as possible.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, this is Scott,
thank
Brian.
you.
I'd like to say NYSC would like to be a part of it as well as assisting in anything we can do.
Okay. Great, Scott. We'll keep you on the
Yeah.
email list.
Scott, I think back to the discussions we've had with the partnership about just that pipeline that Steve Shaw was talking about, engaging with our universities. In those discussions, we were thinking broadly just based on district careers, but, this issue is part and parcel to that discussion. And, we were moving forward to try to get some information, get an outreach campaign together, and COVID hit. So, definitely something to bring back to NYHCD, and yet another reason why we need to work on this pipeline, if you will. And I know that's probably a bad analogy, right? Because we're actually talking about water pipelines as a part of the engineering practices. So maybe I think of a different one. But thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I think you got a good plan going forward, and then you maybe have to give us monthly updates on how this is proceeding, Ryan.
Sure, we'll do.
Yep.
Great.
And no
Anyone
doubt,
else?
every state budget time, this will become yet another significant justification for continued support.
Good. Next on the is our task report from all the staff.
Yes, thank you, Dale.
Sorry, Bethany, go ahead.
Yeah. That's okay. I was just going to give a quick introduction, if that's all right, about the meeting. This is Bethany Bisdu, and yesterday we had our second Technical Advisory Committee meeting of the year, and we had a pretty full agenda, and the meeting was well attended. We received updates from Tim regarding the engineering conservation practice designation, as well as an update from Jason Kokinos on the cover crop adoption initiative. We also had some great discussion on program development for Ag Non-Point Source Round 27 and AIM Base 17. Ron Bush was able to present to the group on some changes regarding the Ag B&T catalog, and we were able to round out the meeting with just a quick update on where everything is with CRF. So I believe each of the folks who headed up the topics that we talked about yesterday are going to give the group here today an update and a summary of what was discussed.
Thank you, Bethany. And one audible as well on this as we kind of discussed the timeline after putting this agenda out. A part of Ron Bush's presentation or discussion on the Ag Practices Catalog, we will be asking this committee to pass a motion allowing us to move forward with that so that it can be released along with the Round 27 RFP. So just keep that in mind as well. We'll cover that as a part of this TAC report.
So I think since we just heard from Tim on the status of the engineering conservation practices designation, I think Jason, you can go ahead and kick things off.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, guys. So up to our increasing cover crop adoption survey, we had a workshop call in and three big topics came up. I can just condense them all for sharing today. One was farmer outreach and partnership and how to get farmers on board more in challenging financial times and also variability in years with weather and management plans. And another topic came up, which we heard about a couple state committee meetings ago, is promoting double cropping as a management plan, considering cover crops as a means of revenue. So thinking about how to support both of those, state and districts together. We also talked about equipment and the challenges that districts face with costs for insurance and the equipment costs in general. And we know that Vermont has a cost share program for equipment for new innovative, supported with state committee programs. Districts mentioned that the variability and the challenges that farms face would need flexibility and simplicity in a program. So there's an untapped niche for perhaps a local cover crop adoption fund that can be give districts a little bit more flexibility in who they choose and when and how much based around a per acre rate with a given amount per county, similar to a quote unquote block grant. But we have been mulling that idea around in the context of AIM base and if it could be done with that program as a way to support that short-term adoption efforts. So that was kind of the wrap up of the survey, and I think that we've gleaned a lot of good ideas and are pushing them forward in our adjustments of AIM base and other programs to support it. And looking forward, I would like to keep sharing answers with those who'd be interested, partners outside of this local group, and yeah, just making actions on what we've learned. So that's it. Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jason. So the next item on the TAC agenda yesterday was to discuss round 27 of the Ag Non-Point Source program. I updated the group regarding the motion that was passed at our March state committee meeting to basically release 2 rounds of funding in this year, the first being round 27 with an expedited time frame, and then release round 28 at the end of the year. So I will hold off on my report and my update on what we discussed at the TAC meeting until the end of this meeting. So Greg, I think you're up.
Stephanie, thank you very much. And if you're still good hosting that slide I sent, that would be super. Good morning, everybody. And I apologize for just popping in for a cameo here. I'm on another call this morning with NRCS colleagues in New York. Thanks, Bethany. So like Bethany said, we also discussed at the TAC yesterday the next iteration of the AIM-based program, and that's called Round 17. And had a very good discussion about it. And this one slide, you might remember it. It's a tool we use to communicate in one slide the AIM 16 approach, and have updated it for AIM 17. And so some basics first. AIM 16 was a lot of thought was put into it by districts and state committee staff and partners in the state committee itself. And districts have been operating it really, really well, and the feedback's very positive. So that's a good cue to continue on with the same basic approach, and then zoom in on all the notes from the very small details of, hey, this process that you included in AIM 16 is redundant with this other one. Can we just make it one and streamline it? All the way up to more substantial changes to the program. So the intention of this slide and discussion is to just communicate that it will be very similar. It's going to involve 2 tracks, thanks, Bethany. A technical assistance track for funding with 3 options, and you can see the funding caps amounts on the left-hand portion of the screen, and an updated rate per acre, technical assistance rate of $48 per acre. And then the second track will be the Tier 4 implementation cost share track with similar framework as in AIM 16 at this point. The schedule of AIM 17 would run the same as with AIM 16, where action plans would be due on November 1st of 2021. The program would start on January 1st of 2022, and it would run through the end of 2023. So we put this up into the state committee lens and also the minutes to give a heads up to districts that this is coming and expect a very similar approach, but with some streamlining changes as well as some more substantial program changes, like Jason sort of indicated that we're pondering with the TAC, and we'll further start that process with the formal state committee in May. And this gets to the important note down at the bottom that we'll tee this up for a proper introduction and discussion of the draft design in May and seek approval from the state committee for the AIM 17 program and contract policy approach in June. And then depending on when we were able to get into queue with our internal reviews in state government, a release of AIM 17 for district use starting in July and August, again, toward that November 1st, 2021 action plan goal. So a date. So hopefully this gives folks a sense for what's coming, so districts can. And Dustin Reyes did a great job of representing districts yesterday as a CDA rep at the TAC meeting, and made a good point of giving a forecast of what AIM 17 will look like in general and its schedule, so that they can start thinking or continue thinking in many cases on their AIM 16 work to tee up good projects on the technical assistance side, and especially also the Tier 4 cost share track side for AIM 17. So again, just a little bit to whet appetites here on the bones of AIM 17. But as Jason indicated, there's certainly discussions to be had. So those who were in the TAC yesterday, please feel free to contact me or us as state committee staff. And I look forward to expanding that conversation in May with the state committee. Brian or Bethany or others, if there's anything sort of at summary level I missed there that you want to layer in, please do.
Greg, I think you nailed it. It'll be a major point of emphasis for our May meeting. But thanks for certainly a very thorough discussion yesterday, you and staff and the TAC, and the summary here today.
Very good. Thanks for the time here, and I'm going to pivot back to the other meeting there. So, unless there are questions, not to get into the depths of yesterday's discussion, but if I should pause if there are questions, I should open it up for that. Okay, good. Well, thanks for the time, everybody.
All right, Greg, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Yep, you too.
So Ron, I think you're up with the ABMP catalog.
Thanks, Bethany. I'm gonna grab the screen, and in the effort to be short, I'm going to go slow and deliberate here. So just bear with me, and we're going to toggle between a couple different viewpoints. And I won't even make it official how we present the PowerPoint, because we're going to be quick. But just as a review, the New York State Soil and Water Conservation Committee develops and we continuously maintain what we call the Agricultural Best Management Practice Systems Catalog. This has been an effort to provide guidance and consistency throughout state planning and implementation projects over time through not only New York State programs, but also to provide guidance to some of our partnering agencies and efforts, such as the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And this is no stranger to the state committee, so you all have at different times maybe voted and approved this document. And what our goal today is just to provide a quick update of some of the edits that we've made and look to basically gain approval to release the new edited or updated version of this catalog that is already existing out there. It's publicly available. Planners and technicians throughout districts and the private sector use this almost exclusively, developing CNMPs as well as participating, just as an example, in our Ag Non-Point Source program. And the main goal is to address resource concerns with a systems approach. So on the screen, we have some of our existing systems, and each one of those has a bunch of guidance and planning processes and, external benefits associated with each one, and they're comprised of one or many NRCS conservation practice standards. Just an example, there's just each one of these systems has a ton of information, and you guys can review this on your own. Our main goal was to just highlight some of our changes. So I don't know if Brian was able to share this yesterday, but what you'd be almost blindly approving is general edits to punctuation and grammar. We've updated NRCS standards within this document. The last update was conducted in 2016, and there's been a slew of NRCS practices either discontinued in New York, updated, changed, new versions provided, and it does change how we interact with as a state program with those conservation practice standards. So the new catalog is up to date to this point. We do know, however, that there's another wave of NRCS updates coming down the line. So part of this approval is a commitment on our end, state committee staff, to keep an active eye on this, update it annually or as needed, and always keep it fresh and up to date. So it won't be 5 or 6 years until our next update. We're going to keep our eyes on this actively. A couple of the other updates were we wanted to provide an introduction document that provided what the catalog is, what a BMP system is, how it's used, examples, and some of the guidance and ethics around those BMPs and systems. So that has been provided in the new catalog, as well as a link to interact with the state committee through us first, but then we would bring any updates to our state committee meetings, our TAC meetings, and then under that advisement, we bring updates to the state committee to enhance this BMP catalog. And spending a little time on this process has been worthwhile because we know that New York State has quite a bit of new programs coming down the line and new focus areas, and we want this document to support as many of those initiatives as possible. So hopefully when those come through or changes are needed, we can put those through pretty quickly. Just a few things we wanted to clarify for the meeting in specific systems. So access control system, we updated the guidance and provided clarification that would allow this livestock management system to allow for the periodic use of livestock to manage in those riparian buffers. That is based on being consistent with NRCS riparian herbaceous cover standards. The next one, this is a little more invasive. So we previously had the erosion control structural system, and that was all of your land management BMPs like wascops, diversion, terraces, strip cropping, all of those being put together to control erosion out in the fields. We wanted to update this system to open it to the farmstead so that you would be able to address gully erosion or impacts on, heavy watersheds and clean water on access roads, for example. So we're going to do a trial, see if it works good as a way to address some resource concerns in the farmstead for erosion. And we specifically provide guidance in there that it is not a system to treat concentrated nutrient-laden runoff. An example would be like, this would not be appropriate for addressing runoff from a barnyard. The next little focus area of this edit was to just enhance the clarification and guidance on how to assess, plan, and treat resource concerns associated with agricultural feed bag storage areas. We're looking at, is leachate evident or not? And if it is not, and the major resource concern is the disturbed area, erosion, sediment leaving the site, then we would still use this system to protect that area and control the potential source of leachate with a series of BMPs to support that area. So we've been teaching folks on this in our training programs and our planning guidance on the level of BMPs necessary to treat feed bag storage areas and how those change and need further protection when leachate is evident. The last part, like I said before, we're making a goal. I've got a huge helicopter flying overhead, so bear with me. We're going to have work on a forest conservation system, and this is to support our AEM 3A track forest conservation planning, as well as the planning aspect and the erosion associated with forestry practices. And in the future, we may build upon the cultural part of this system, which would be forest management plans and some of the efforts to improve harvesting and what type of species are out there in the woodlots. So I would say look forward to something coming in the near future as an additional system to support our programs. And we will bring this back up when we need to do a quick update on keeping it active with current standards. I'm going to pause because I can go on forever with this, so I'll just stop it there and answer any questions.
Any questions or comments, Dr. Ron?
Yes, hi Ron, this is Paul Kasmarzik from DOH. The Watershed Agricultural Council in the New York City watershed has done a lot of work along these lines. And I don't know if you've been in touch with any of those people.
I have. We're currently looking to meet up and collaborate on the approach for that watershed and the history of feed storage bag areas down there and the legacy of those existing systems exceeding their lifespans or maybe needing some O&M or further assessment as time has gone on. So yes, we are in touch, but I don't want to cut you off. Keep going if you want to share some stuff.
No, I was just thinking they've had a forestry program going on for quite a while. And they assist people with management plans and all that sort of stuff. And, they've had successes and I wouldn't say failures, but I think they work with fewer landowners than they would had hoped to by now. So I don't know. I just think there might be a decent resource to sort of say what they've done. They feel it's worked, and some of the areas that they've had less success. You guys could maybe do some brainstorming.
Yes, thank you. This, I'm sure we're going to have a little focus group on how we transition. Like, we've had a lot of planning initiatives supported through the AEM program, and we're starting to take those to the next level. Find planners and technicians that have kind of the lens to do work out there and the expertise, as well as look at further these efforts going forward. But certainly we don't want this to be in a vacuum, and we want it to work for everyone. So we're going to probably throw, as Dale said earlier, a wide net over this and see, get all the experts that we can involved.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for that suggestion. And as Ron points out, I think that will be the focus of the next iteration of this. Certainly, as I mentioned before, the Ag and Forestry Advisory Panel, a lot of discussion with our partners as the Division of Lands and Forests, the DEC, about how to reach all of the hundreds of thousands of individual forest landowners, and average of 25 acres or less of forest out there for management planning and implementation of those plans. And they really are looking at our AEM planning process as a really good example of what's out there, and a structure that could work, and really want to engage with us in the expansion of district services. All of that is exciting and also a bit daunting, but what is exciting about it is the fact that, as Ron points out, we intend to gather, those technical experts, in discussion of expansion of forestry beyond the water quality and erosion control and all of the other aspects that we currently can look at, into more of a core forest management track, which will help to meet not only water quality and a host of other environmental goals, but certainly also carbon sequestration and climate change goals. So excited about that next iteration as well.
Ryan, you need a motion to approve that catalog change, don't you?
I do. We do.
All right. Looking for a motion to approve the updated management practice systems catalog.
So moved.
A second? Moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. I will call roll call for a vote, starting with Scott.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Approved the updated management practice systems catalog.
Thank you, everyone.
Bethany?
Jennifer, do you have anything additional to add on CRF round 6? I know you touched on it earlier.
Thanks, Bethany. Yeah, this is Jennifer. So I'll just, for the TAG meeting, we went over that the committee had approved combining 2 fiscal years and a timeline that we'd bring the RFP to the TAC, or discussion of the RFP for round 6 to the TAC this summer, and then seek approval from the state committee after that later in the summer, to still be on track to release round 6 RFP in December 2021. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. So that actually will conclude our TAC update. Just as Jennifer mentioned, we'll be having our 3rd TAC meeting sometime in the summer, and then probably have a 4th one a little bit later in the year, in October, November timeframe.
Thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda is our proposed May 18th meeting. Voting members, what does that day look like for you?
That works for me, Dale. This is Erica.
Yeah, Scott, I'll make it work.
I'll do my best to make it work, Dale.
I think we'll shoot for May 18th for our next meeting. Do you have any problems with that, Brian?
No, I think that's puts us back into that third Tuesday schedule. I will reach out to Darren and ask. I know that things are a bit hit or miss with his farm this time of year, so
yeah.
But I'll try to get.
Good. Next, we'll move on to the Ag Non-Site Source Program with Jason and Bethany.
Thank you, Dale. Jason, you can go ahead and get us started.
Okay, I'll do the program dashboard for Ag Non-Point Source, similar to CRF. So today in the Ag Non-Point Source program, there's 831 completed contracts totaling $134.3 million. 159 contracts are currently active, totaling $55.1 million. 35 contracts have been canceled, and 46 contracts are currently pending from round 26, which is currently being input into our database. We have them all set to go in and typing them in. And something to update is round 20, we closed up on our database. So all done with that.
Fantastic.
So that was a good thing to know. So that's it for the data update for Ag Non-Point Source. Thank you, guys.
And I'll just give a brief update on where things are at regarding round 26. So soil and water districts that were awarded funds through round 26 are currently working on developing their plans of work, and they are submitting them to our office. And as Jason just mentioned, we're getting them in the database as they come in. Late last week, I received an email from our fiscal management division indicating that OSD has approved the procurement record for this round of funding, which is a big hurdle to get over. And what that means is now that we have that approval, we can move forward and start developing contracts for the project. So we're going to start doing that, I guess, as soon as possible and get that process started for the round 26 projects. And hopefully we'll, in the next couple of months, start seeing some active contracts for that round 26 line start showing up in our data report.
I want to commend all the districts. In my term on the committee, this is probably the only time we've been closed out and so many contracts filled in right up until only 5 years out. Usually we're dragging longer than that, trying to finish up contracts. Done very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. The number of contracts that we've been closing and processing in the past year has been significant. So we're really wrapping all those projects up and getting all that work done. I will also add that I do not have any amendments to bring to the committee for this month.
Thank you. Excellent. Anything else on Ag Non-Point Source Program, anyone? Brian, you want to start us in the next part then?
Yeah, you know what, Dale, we're running ahead of schedule, and I'm wondering, to give folks a chance to disconnect the line before we start up again. It's about 11:35 right now. Do we want to take a 5-minute break, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do, and then we'll come back at 11:40, and we'll get into the round 27 RFP. With that said, at this point in time, I again will ask all districts, with the exception of the CDA designated representative and farmers who might be on the line right now, or district board members, to please recuse themselves from this discussion by disconnecting, from the WebEx or phone line. And I will do a quick scan before we start up again. Make sure we are good to begin our discussion.
Brian?
Does that sound good for everybody?
Yep. 5-minute break, everybody.
Brian,
yep, I'm here,
this is Caitlin. As the vice president, should I remain on the line?
Yes. Dustin is not on, correct? You are representing CDA today.
Correct.
Yep. Then pursuant to our ethics decision, CDA representative is allowed to stay on the line as the district's voice in these discussions. So yes, you can.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Brian.
No problem. All right, we'll be back at 11:40, everybody. Dale, just taking a quick scan of the participant list, and I think we are good when folks are ready to reconvene.
Excellent. I think we're real close.
Bethany, are you back?
I am. It was just, I guess,
Excellent.
waiting for the go ahead to start sharing my screen.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and start on the round 27?
Yep,
All right.
we're ready.
So I'm going to pull up the RFP, the draft RFP. And was this sent out ahead of time to the voting members?
It was just
Okay,
last
perfect.
evening.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so as I touched on yesterday during our technical advisory committee meeting, we had a discussion of the round 27 request for proposal and talked about some various items that are going to be revised for this round of funding. Just as a recap of last month's meeting at the state committee, we proposed this idea of releasing 2 rounds of Ag non-point source funds in 1 year, basically to kind of catch up after, all of the delays that were caused and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was approved by the committee. So since last month, I have been working on developing the RFP for round 27. And because we do have such an expedited time frame, there really aren't very many major procedural or policy changes that are being incorporated into this RFP. Just in essence of the time that we have available and the speed at which we want to try and get this RFP out. We wanted to keep the changes as minimal as possible. Real quick, for round 27, we will have approximately $13 million available to support projects through this round. And as a reminder, funding for round 27 comes from last year's state fiscal budget that was approved for 2020 to 2021. So in that budget, the Ag non-point source line was appropriated $18 million. After considering there were 3 different carve-outs built into that part of the EPF budget as well. And I also wanted to make sure we set aside the AIM Base 16 year 2 split that was approved to make sure we have those funds available. And that got us down to $13 million for round 27, which is $2 million less than what was available for round 26. But again, I just wanted to be conservative, mainly in regards to making sure we have enough funds available for the AIM-based program and having those funds that support the Tier 4 cost share track. The first, I guess, major change that we are building into this RFP is the requirement that applicants that are requesting state funds for the implementation of an agricultural waste storage facility must demonstrate that a CNMP has been completed prior to the submission of the application to the round. This item was discussed last August at a technical advisory committee and then brought to the state committee following that. And so now this will require anyone, any farm that is applying for a waste storage to demonstrate that they have a completed CNMP prior to submitting that application. Previously, we did not require that a CNMP needed to be complete. Rather, they needed to demonstrate that one was in development or that it was certified before any payment was issued for the completed BMP. So that change has been reflected here in the RFP. We've also updated the recommended hourly rates that are included in the RFP document for each round, and these rates were recently updated utilizing the 2019 annual reports. And again, we've been able to continue including an hourly rate for SWCC engineers, which I think has been a really great addition, and more districts are bringing those engineers on staff, and hopefully perhaps as a result of the changes that we talked about earlier today, we'll see more of those come on as well. So here is our, I guess, draft timeline for now. But my intent is to release the RFP on May 10th. And shortly thereafter, we are required to begin posting questions and answers, and that would start on May 24th. We also are required to impose a deadline for the submittal of questions, which would be June 14th. And the final Q&A document would be posted on June 21st, which would be 1 week before the deadline for proposals, which is currently set at June 28th, which is a Monday. And that gives districts approximately 7 weeks to develop an application and submit it for round 27. Again, that timeline is very draft at this point and subject to change because the process and the steps that the RFP has to go through to get reviewed and approved by all the various different levels can sometimes take some time. So those dates are subject to change a little bit, but I really would like to try to stick to those as much as possible. And so if all goes to plan and we have a deadline of June 28th, that would put us into July and August to conduct the scoring. And then we would most likely have a post-review meeting to discuss the scores sometime in September and bring a ranked list to the October State Committee meeting for consideration and approval. I wanted to build in a little bit of flexibility throughout the month of September in case there needed to be any extra time to make sure the scores are appropriate and accurate. So we do have a little bit of flexibility, but if things are going ahead of schedule, we could potentially see a ranked list at the September State Committee meeting. So then if we're able to get an award announcement or if we're able to bring the list to the State Committee in October, hopefully an award announcement would follow shortly thereafter. And then we would get back on track with a release of another RFP round 28 in December. And that would be done in conjunction with CRF round 6. So I just made some, I guess, grammatical or formatting type changes here. But I do want to highlight that we have made a couple revisions to the preference points section. So as a reminder, the Ag Non-Point Source program offers preference points to applications that for a number of different qualifications. So if an application demonstrates that they will be doing work in or implementing BMPs in a watershed with a TMDL or a watershed that's included on the most recent 303D list, or if there is an active 9-element watershed plan, that application could receive 2 extra points onto their score. We also make available an option for districts if they are implementing projects or doing work within a public drinking water source water assessment area. That application could also qualify for 2 points. And then we have bonus points available for projects that propose to implement riparian buffers on each landowner that is included in the application. And those points are awarded on a gradual scale based on the BMPs that are actually being proposed. At the January meeting of our Technical Advisory Committee, we discussed increasing the amount of available preference points from 4, which was, excuse me, from 4, which were, that's the number of points that we've had available for the past few rounds. And we discussed increasing that to 5. And in keeping with, we increased the overall available points that a proposal can earn from 40 to 50. So it just seemed appropriate to also increase the amount of available bonus points from 4 to 5. So that idea was supported by the TAC back in January, and we also discussed some different options to perhaps include new bonus point categories or different options to accommodate that extra bonus point. For round 27, we've decided to table making any changes in regards to adding a new bonus point category or adding another consideration in there, just for time's sake, and we want to kind of table those changes for round 28. I will also mention that back in January, representatives from New York State DEC and the Department of Health spoke to the group about introducing a new bonus point category that would provide bonus points for projects that are going in within communities that have an executed drinking source water protection plan that is developed through a drinking source water protection plan initiative that those 2 agencies have been working on. The TAC was very supportive of including that category, but again, we are tabling it for round 27, and we'll bring it back for consideration for round 28. Folks from DEC and DOH were also supportive of kind of holding off because it will allow them to be more in line with where they are in rolling out their program, and hopefully we would see some communities that have actual plans already developed. So that's where we are there. The same changes are reflected here regarding the preference points. A new item that I wanted to bring up today, and which was discussed yesterday at the TAC, is a new restriction built into our already existing 5-point penalty structure. So currently in our RFP, the application format, we require a number of different documents to be submitted as part of the application packet. Some of those items are marked with a single asterisk, and what that indicates is that those items are essential, required elements, and if any of those items are not included in the application packet, that automatically constitutes an incomplete proposal and the application is not considered for funding. But there are also a number of different items in the application packet list that are marked with a double asterisk, and those indicate that the items are required elements. However, if they're determined to be missing, the applicant will be notified by email and given 5 business days to submit that missing item. If the applicant is able to submit that missing item within that time frame, then we will assess a 5-point reduction penalty on their final aggregated score and still allow that application to be considered for funding. What we discussed yesterday at the TAC is adding an extra, I guess, provision or restriction on there that would no longer make those applications that receive a 5-point penalty eligible to receive bonus points. And the idea here is to try to further encourage districts to really be focusing on developing a complete application that can be reviewed by the reviewers before they are focusing on providing the extra documents needed to earn those extra bonus points. And now that we have increased the number of available bonus points to 5, if a district qualifies to receive, that maximum amount, but also receives that 5-point penalty, it would just essentially, they would zero each other out, and there really wouldn't be much of an impact on that application that was not initially complete. So it's just a way to further encourage districts to be thorough in their development of the application packet, and to, I guess, encourage them not to rely on those bonus points as, I guess, a safeguard in case an item is left missing. This idea was supported by the TAC yesterday, and if supported by the state committee, we will move forward with adding that requirement to the RFP as well. This section here, section 3.8, has just been updated to reflect a change regarding the PWL worksheets. The DEC has now developed a online map tool that you use to find the PWL sheets. Previously, they were all kind of listed like in a PDF format on the DEC's website, but if districts want to access those sheets and include them as supporting documentation, or access those sheets to look for, I guess, information to help develop their narratives, and answer some questions in the application form, they'll have to use this new tool. So I made sure to update that and include some instructions, so hopefully that is clear and they're able to utilize those. Again, this section of the RFP just shows the updates that I've already kind of gone over regarding our bonus points. And I discussed that we will be increasing the amount of available bonus points from 4 to 5. And for round 27, to accommodate that change, I essentially just increased the points that are available that we award for the riparian buffers and livestock exclusion. So now, if an application is submitted and they are, the projects are located within a watershed with or an area with a TMDL, and all landowners are proposing to implement a forested buffer, that application could qualify for the full 5 points. And I'm just scanning here. In this section, I'll just mention that I added some extra language here to reflect some recent changes that we made to the closeout process, specifically for ag non-point source. So I just kind of expanded this a little bit and wanted to make sure that that was built into the RFP as well. Again, we're continuing to include the proposal rating sheet as part of the RFP packet. So the information that you see here, the first page of the proposal rating sheet relates to the preference points. So all the changes here we've already discussed. The only other item that I changed on this proposal rating sheet for round 27 is kind of a subcategory of the identified need section. And I wanted to clarify in this bullet point here under the project addresses a significant need or opportunity. I wanted to clarify that reviewers should be looking at the project ID that is assigned to the individual application when they're trying to assess whether or not the district has rated that particular proposal as one of their highest priorities. And I can talk a little bit more about that in just one moment. We've also built in a map that will be included in the RFP, or we're proposing that it should be included in the RFP. I asked Jason to develop a map of the New York State major drainage basins, as well as within each one of those drainage basins, provide outlines for the HUC 8 watersheds within each one of those major drainage basins. And I am going to shift over to the application form, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that map is going to be included in the RFP. While I'm switching screens here, are there any questions so far? Okay, so we're seeing the application form for round 27. Okay, so again, thank you, Jennifer. This is the first page of the round 27 application form, and again, right here, right up front, you'll notice where where there's a spot for districts to put in their project ID. I've now added, I guess, the word priority there to relate it back to that particular scoring category in the rating sheet. And this is where districts need to indicate the priority of their project. And this is specifically or particularly important for districts that submit multiple applications. We ask that districts rank them in terms of priority, and assign that number, like number 1, 2, or 3, to that particular application, and evaluators will utilize that information to help determine their identified need score. The next page of the application form is where we get into some specific questions regarding the identified need or opportunity of the proposed project. And question number 5 here asks proposal, and this is supposed to tie back to their AEM strategic plan that was developed. Previously, in past rounds, we asked districts to indicate the priority of that specific planning unit. And it's become apparent to me that it is difficult districts assess their planning units in a very different way all across the state. And in some districts, there may be multiple planning units included in their strategic plan, but they all might carry a high priority. So it makes it a little bit difficult for reviewers to really assess the need of the project based on the priority of that AIM strategic plan. So a proposed change here is going to be to remove that priority. Pardon?
Is it just me? My voice cutting in and out?
Are you having trouble seeing the screen?
No, I see the screen fine. My voice cutting in and out, or your voice cutting in and out. I don't know if it's just me or anyone else.
It's here too. Big time.
I was hearing you okay, Bethany. Is it better now?
Can you hear me better now? I guess.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hopefully it stays coming through okay. So the first proposed change here with the round 27 application form would be to remove this column where districts used to indicate the priority of their AEM strategic planning unit and just require them to indicate the planning unit that they will be addressing in their proposal. This still will meet the identified need category that would tie the project back to an AEM strategic plan. However, it would kind of remove the confusion that exists regarding the priority and really direct evaluators back to looking at the project priority ID in order to assess the priority of the project. Questions 6 through 10 were added and some were revised to the application form in hopes to give evaluators a better idea of where the projects exist on the landscape. And this is question 6 specifically is the reason why we are including a map in the RFP for round 27. This question asks districts to identify the major watershed basin that their project will be located in, and they also have to use that map to determine the HUC 8 that is associated with that watershed. And the idea here is to start off, very broadly and just kind of give evaluators a sense, in a broad sense, where the project is in the state. From there, they are asked to refine it a little bit farther and indicate the sub-watersheds that will be addressed by the proposed project. And they also have to indicate the hydrologic unit code, the 12-digit code in this question number 7. On another form that we require in our application packet, districts need to identify the HUC 12 on that form as well. So those two responses should match up. I've added 2 additional questions here, questions 8 and 9, to give districts the opportunity to identify if an aquifer will be impacted by the proposed project. And they will also have the opportunity to identify whether or not that aquifer is a primary, principal, or sole source aquifer. And we've added a question to allow districts to indicate whether or not they will be impacting a public drinking water supply. And they will also have the opportunity to add in the population that is being served by that specific public drinking water supply. And those couple of questions just give districts an opportunity to add more information into their application that will help reviewers assess the need of the project. We had a couple of good questions yesterday come up during our TAC meeting regarding where districts might access some of the information to determine whether or not the aquifer is primary, principal or sole source, or information regarding the population that's served by the public drinking water supply. A lot of this information can be accessed on the internet. The Department of Health maintains kind of an online database or spreadsheet that lists the population served by the various public drinking water supplies, across the state. The Department of DEC also maintains information regarding, aquifers and their designation. And we discussed yesterday that we have the opportunity or the ability to provide those references to those information or to that information as part of our Q&A process, and that can be put out there and shared for all districts to access. And then to get even finer, districts in question 10 will need to identify the individual stream segments that will be impacted by the proposed project. And this is where they will indicate a PWL segment number and will also identify whether or not that segment is assessed or unassessed. I think all of these changes were well supported yesterday at our committee meeting, and everyone, I believe for the most part, agreed that having all this extra information in there will really help reviewers visualize where things are and where the project is in proximity to the water resources that will be addressed by the project. And the last major change that I want to review for the group is just some revisions that I made to the project narrative section of the round 27 application. A couple of rounds ago, we decided to split the project narrative up into two sections. The first being the problem statement, where districts were required to describe the water quality concern or issue that they are addressing. And they also were required to include information that describes how that concern or issue has been documented or why is it justified. The second section of the narrative is called the project objective, where districts describe the projects that they are proposing and how it will address the water quality concern that they just described in the problem statement. So what I've done here is basically just add a couple, added some additional direction and clarifications to the information that districts are supposed to be supplying in their responses to each part of that narrative. Specifically, the problem statement really needs to be tied very closely with the identified need of the project. And, districts should include all of the information that is described there and really make sure that they are meeting the requirements of that identified need scoring category. In the project objective, that section should tie closely to the other three scoring categories that we have through the Ag Non-Point Source program, those being the local support category, scope of work, and cost effectiveness. All of the scoring criteria that are in our rating sheet, for those three scoring categories relate to the project objective and should be described here in that section. And I think, or I'm hoping that by making these clarifications in the application form, that this will make projects a little bit easier and quicker to review for reviewers. I know there was some concern at our last state committee meeting that there was going to be kind of a time crunch with other programs going out, and especially with such a tight turnaround for this RFP. I was really hoping that if we're able to get solid, clear, and concise narratives, that would make the review process that much easier for our evaluators. And that is the last major, I guess, change that I wanted to discuss with the group. And we'll, I guess, open it up if there are any questions or comments.
Hi, this is Caitlin from CDEA. We feel that this is absolutely within our timeline, and with the space given between the RFP for round 27 and 28, this is absolutely doable. And Bethany, thank you for your very thorough and detailed review of this.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And you're going to need a motion to approve it all, aren't you?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion before we go on? All right, I will call. Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, I just want to echo Caitlin's remarks. It's a very good, thorough presentation of a very, comprehensive effort. And although I still, there aren't a lot of substantial changes, I just want to go through all of this to make sure that you all were aware of what was in it. And I will, Bethany, one thing actually from the very beginning, we talked about 13 million available, and certainly there's a good rationale for that. How we track available funds that return to the program, and the potential that we could extend beyond that, but at this point we don't know. So to remind the group that that's the minimum that we'd make available.
Yes, absolutely. So that is that $13 million number is what we have available straight from what was appropriated in that 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. However, we do often have funds that are returned to the program when projects are closed out, and they either come in under budget, or sometimes we do have contracts that get canceled, and those funds are returned to the program and put back into the Ag Non-Point Source bank account, if you will. And we are able to use those funds to make additional awards if necessary. When in any round of funding, we're able to make additional awards if those funds are available. But we have also made the decision to utilize those returned funds to support the Tier 4 cost share track of the AIM-based program. So I've been tracking that number, the amount of return funds very closely for the past couple of years, and making sure that we have enough to support those projects, as well as if we have the opportunity, we could potentially award more than 13 million, if those funds are there.
Good. We have a motion to approve round 27 RFP on the rating sheet. I'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave? Muted. Dave? Didn't hear you, Dave. Scott?
Aye.
Oh, we have an up to approve. Moved. Thank you. Approved. Anything else, Brian, you got to cover?
No, I think we've covered it all today.
A lot of work, a lot of in-depth work. I want to thank all the staff for everything you did, all that, the tech meeting information, a lot of work. We are adjourned until our next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see
Thank you. Have a good day.
everyone.